Hey, I'm Sarah, and this is the Goddess in Training podcast. This isn't about being perfect or polished or having it all figured out. This is about what happens when you actually start listening to your body, your intuition, your patterns, your truth. I'm asking big questions and having real conversations, sometimes messy and sometimes magical, with people who've lived through it, grown through it, and still don't have all the answers. If you've ever doubted yourself, betrayed your gut, or wondered if you're the only one, you're not. Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Goddess in Training podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and today's episode is one that truly speaks to the deep, soulful work of healing across lifetimes, generations, and the tender layers of the body. My guest today is Nyomi Roth, a therapist, intuitive, and spiritual guide whose journey began in a small town in Virginia and has since unfolded into a powerful integration of psychology, energy work, ancestral healing, and embodiment. This conversation is rich. We talk about everything from growing up fast and the grief of childhood's lost to learning how to play again as adults. We explore the energetic wisdom of the body, how trauma lives in our cells, and how we can begin to listen to the whispers of intuition, to the stories of our ancestors, and to the parts of ourselves that are still waiting to be seen and held. Nyomi opens up about her own gifts, her family legacy, and what it means to create truly safe and affirming healing spaces, especially in places where spiritual and cultural traditions have often been misunderstood or erased. Whether you're on your own healing journey, curious about integrating the spiritual with the clinical, or just craving a deeply human conversation, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for joining us today on Goddess in Training. I am here with my friend Nyomi Roth. I met Nyomi a couple of weeks ago. As my life has been recently, I'm just going and doing, and all of these beautiful people are just entering into my field of consciousness, and I asked them if they want to sit down and have a conversation, and all of them have said yes. And so it is just pure magic. And so Nyomi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I've never done a podcast interview like this. I did a virtual one a long time ago, and that's all my experience with it. So I'm excited.
Okay. I love doing them in person. I'm trying to do as many in person as possible because you just feel the energy so much more, and it's just a lot more organic, and the conversation flows in a different way. I find that virtually people will have their notes and they feel like it's more scripted, and in person it's just like a conversation with a friend. Yeah.
I love this idea, and I'm thankful that you invited me to do it.
Thank you. So tell us about you. Tell us, how did you start on your journey? Because you are integrating more traditional therapy methods with more holistic things. So tell me how that came to be.
Well, I guess to go back of the original history of how I came into the helping profession. So I grew up in Martinsville, Virginia. It's about an hour and a half south from here. And my mom would take me at a really early age to nursing homes and women's shelters. Also, I have very vivid memories of being in a car seat and her pulling over on the side of the road to help people. So she kind of set this helping precedent at a really early age of how important it is to show up for your community and help people whenever you can. And so I remember those things. And even for the summertime when I didn't have extracurricular activity or camp, she would drop me off at the nursing home and I would spend all day. She would pack a lunch, and this was elementary school. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm now thinking back, that's very inventive because it's free, but then also I'm helping the CNAs and nurses and learning a lot about life and death and morality and showing up for your community at a really early age. Now I can see that, but at that time I was do I have to go?
Oh, that was gonna be my question.
Spend time with friends. And now I'm really thankful for it though. So I would just sit there and learn, soak up like a sponge, and anybody family-wise will tell you I've always been very inquisitive. Like I like asking questions and just talking to people. So I'd sit there and ask about their memories and, do they have family that come and visit them, and where are they from? Or I paint their nails, and just things that now I'm really, really grateful to have had that experience. And I think that also helped me tune in more to some of the gifts that I now recognize are present around why I would feel so deeply some of the grief and shifts in the room, or things that I might have saw but did not know what I was seeing in terms of the spiritual realm then at an early age. And it wasn't really talked about in my as like I come from a Christian background, and so they would have certain, like, I guess related terms with like laying hands or
Right.
to the Holy Ghost
Mm-hmm.
to relate to some of the things that I now know and utilize differently.
But it's all the same.
All the same language.
Yeah. Right. But it's ingrained in us that, I don't know, there's just this like competition and fear around alternative language for the same exact thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really interesting too, because if you look at all of the texts from like just a objective lens and perspective of seeing all of them, it's a universal truth just written in like different languages, as if I'm speaking English and someone's speaking German. It's just the same language to get connected to source.
Exactly. We're all one.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're in a moment when people are realizing that more and more. And it's so exciting to watch this collective awakening happen. Are you still close with your mom? And how much intention was there in those experiences that she was giving to you?
That's a really good question. I haven't asked her that question specifically, but I do know she worked a lot. And so some of it was like the affordability.
Necessity.
Yeah, and accessibility to a safe place for me. And no, she had a friend or two that worked at the nursing home. So they would kind of, lay eyes on me and make sure I was okay and pop in and out. But I think it was out of that. But then she grew up taking care of her family members. So my grandma, her mom died earlier from different, medical issues, and she took care of her until she died. And so it was kind of like a normal part of who she is as a person, and still to this day she does that for different family members if she can. And I think that set the tone for me that I wanted to do something related to helping. And my thought process back then was like, okay, I'm going to be a nurse. So in high school I got my CNA license and worked there during the summers or after school and weekends. So I was like 15 or 16 when I got that license.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like what a privilege it is, but then also how odd it was for me versus some of the people my age
Right.
that were doing other things, not to say they were less important, but just a different type of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the experiences I was having were vaguely just like, for me now, stepping back, it's like full circle, because I can see I was helping people by talking to them
Yeah.
and just being present for them in those moments. But it was a vastly different experience than the people my age.
Yeah, very, very different. I mean, when I was 15, 16, I was going out and partying and thinking about my 16-year-old daughter. It's all about friends and going to the pool. And I mean, we all have our own path. So you have a lot of appreciation for that. Is there any part of you that's like, I wish that I didn't have to grow up so quickly?
Yes, I think when you grow up really fast and you experience trauma at a young age, it does sometimes take away some of the childhood. And that's part of what got me into therapy to begin with. Is I remember being young and just begging my mom, please let me go talk to a counselor. But we grew up in a household that what happens in this household stays in this household. And now as a therapist, I know that secrets keep us sick.
Yes.
That shoving stuff away in a closet isn't healthy. It's not really something that allows us to grow and move forward. If anything, it builds resentment. So when I went to college, I got into therapy for the first time and actually was able to acknowledge, like, hey, I had a good childhood in a lot of aspects, and also some unhealthy family dynamics, childhood trauma, and pieces that I didn't get in terms of my childhood joy. So relearning that as like late adolescence and now into adulthood, like, how do I have fun?
Yeah.
What does that actually look like? And it's kind of unfamiliar sometimes because my soul likes to go deep quickly around like, yeah, like I want to have a meaningful conversation. And so I struggle, if anything, more on the opposite side of like, how do I have fun and sit in the lightness? Because I was parentified so early and had certain roles that comes more natural to me. And it's not to make it bad, but it is a thing that I have to acknowledge and continue to work on. How do I have fun and experience joy and allow that in?
Yeah, that's very similar. Also experienced parentification and had to grow up quickly, and definitely went through a phase of adulthood where I played, and I played hard, unapologetically too. And I feel like so many people feel like once you hit adulthood, that's not possible, but it is. It is so possible, and it's so necessary to find those things, like whatever it is that feels like play.
Yes. Yeah. And I even like now, because, okay, I'm an adult, I can make my own decisions. Like, I'll joke with myself or my husband, I'll be like, the best use of free will, what would that look like today? And we'll just go to the park. You know, like, I can do that. Why can't I? Like, I don't have to answer to anybody. So I'll just make little decisions like that where I'll go play in the park, go take walks in the park, or swim, or color, sit on my back porch, play with my dog.
So much of our lives is built around shoulds, like should do that. I should work out. I should eat that. And the needs, like the need to make money and I need to provide. And it's like, just find time to strip all of those things away. Going back to the nursing home, what are some standout conversations that you had as a young person with people who are at a very different stage of life who were confronting imminent death?
I remember there was a lady that I helped take care of who, at that point, they kind of, have hospice involved, and they talk about things like the death rattle, where you can kind of hear and they're not present in terms of the ability to talk, but they're still sometimes present in the fact they can hear you. And I remember talking to I consider her a friend at the time, even though she was a lot older. And I was asking her about it, and she would say like, oh yeah, there's stories you'll hear sometimes from family members or even before they get to this stage where they'll see different people in the room.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you mean? At that point, no one had really openly talked about it with me. It was just kind of this thing that I thought I was seeing, but I also was dismissing it,
Right.
Because I was like, I'm not trying to be crazy here, so I'm just going to come in here and get them their water and get on back in the hallway and back up the hall to chart. She was like, oh yeah, no, it's pretty normal. They'll see different people in the room. They might see their family, to acknowledge that with them and also kind of normalize and not dismiss that for them because we don't know what's happening. And so I remember some of those conversations were interesting. And now to look back and think there's these portals often around not only death, but life, and people being able to experience and talk to people from the other side. Or even have guides that walk them through that we aren't aware of. Some people are, some people are not, that can actually be kind of supporting in the process. That is pretty neat. Like, you have these people, loved ones, ancestors, angels that are surrounding us and kind of help facilitate these really powerful moments like death.
Yeah, transition and rites of passage. And those are the moments when we lean into that guidance that's not in the here and now. And so talk more about discovering your own gifts. I definitely have had those experiences where I have had the beauty and privilege of experiencing exactly what you're talking about, what most people or some people really only experience when they're in that moment of transition or close to it. How does that look like for you and now? And did you have some kind of awakening to source and the other?
I remember being really little and thinking I saw things like down the hallway, and even my dogs would stand there and bark. So I was like, I know for me that was real. And I have a half sister, but I grew up oftentimes by myself because she had went off to college. So a lot of the times I just spent time with my animals and by myself. And when I would acknowledge something and they acknowledged something, I felt validated.
Right.
And I didn't talk about it to anybody else though. And just recently, actually this weekend, I was talking to my great aunt and I was kind of sharing some of what I've learned about myself and these gifts more recently. She was like, well, you must have gotten that from grandma, our great grandma. And I was like, huh? And she was
Wow.
like, oh yeah, she didn't talk about it much, but they say that she could see things and would have dreams or hear spirit and messages from God or even know when certain people might pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, interesting. And so that was kind of like, no one has talked about this
Right.
ever. Why?
The fear, yeah, the fear of judgment and the fear of accepting possibility, really.
I was just like blown away.
Yeah.
And I was thankful I started that conversation because I'm like, okay, so this is something that I've been told by other folks that I visited for like readings. They're like, no, this runs in your family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who? 'Cause I've tried to talk to my mom or my dad. I'm like, have you had dreams? Like trying to just skirt around. Have you had any interesting dreams? So I was like, okay, that kind of really made sense then. But even like little things, I'll hear certain songs, or I was shopping with my dad and I was like, I really want this specific album. And I'm not even kidding. Within a second, he flipped and it was right there.
Right there. Yeah.
So it can be just a wide range of like doing Reiki and experiencing someone's grandma talk to me and giving them that message or a dream and then calling my family and they're like, oh yeah, that person's in the hospital. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And it can be honestly scary with some of the things that you experience and see because you can't pick and choose.
Right.
This isn't like I don't get to just, turn it off, turn it on.
Yeah.
And so some of the things I have seen are sometimes scary. And so I've had spiritual mentors that are kind of helping me also recognize what to do in those instances because there is a spiritual safety you have to have. Just like in this material world of safety, how to keep yourself safe, spiritually doing the same thing. Because when things know that you can see and hear them, they want to make themselves known.
Right.
And sometimes they're not always of the best and highest good.
Right. It's not what serves you in the best way. Yeah. It's important to always be calling that in the moment and believing in divine protection too. I think that so much of it is for me at least knowing and reminding myself like I am protected. And I was just reading something about like how do you know that something is intuition? Because so many people are talking about manifestation. And manifestation is like, okay, well, I would like to not have to worry about money. Okay, well, my intuition then is telling me to buy a lottery ticket. No, that's probably not your intuition. That's like a desire. And what I saw, the answer, which for me is completely true, is that intuition is more often than not uncomfortable. It's telling you something that is uncomfortable. And you can become comfortable with that, but there's a distinct difference in how it feels in your body than something that's just a desire.
And that now that like I have the esoteric knowledge and the psychology behind the body and like that kind of awareness, that's one of my favorite things is being able to educate the clients I work with because when you talk about the gut, our gut houses serotonin. And so when we talk about the mind-body connection, you literally get gut feelings. That's not just a term, it is real.
Yeah.
It happens because that is a chemical, biological feeling when your body is satiated or not with life. And so then to digest that even further around like the emotional awareness of what's happening and sensations in your body and like interoception and how do you know what emotions are what and what they feel like? What is the heaviness about? What is that heart racing? Are those things that are happening within your nervous system and kind of telling you on a different safety level people that do and don't feel safe? Yeah, that is one of my favorite things to nerd out about. I love I love it. That is basically the ability to recognize bodily cues and what they mean on a deeper level. So things like people can say, oh, I'm feeling anxious or I've experienced anxiety. Okay, what does that actually feel like in your body? Because a lot of times I'll start session with, how have you been? You know, how are you doing today? What are you feeling like? And people might say, oh, I'm good. I'm tired. Okay. So then when you really get down to it, it's almost like an iceberg. At the surface level, we have these things that you may acknowledge, but because in our society we're so busy and we don't slow down, you've actually experienced grief, frustration, maybe some joy, maybe some anxiety, all in the span of a day.
Yeah.
And people may feel that in their body in different ways, whether that's, constipation and gut issues, tension in their body, their jaw, their chest. All these different like somatic awareness and presence of symptoms and cues that people don't slow down enough to actually realize beneath the surface what they're telling them about also.
Yeah. And it's so easy to quickly label something. And if you really think about it, a feeling like anxiety feels in the body the same way as excitement.
Yes, they are.
And so tease that out a little bit. Like, how can people really think about and try to figure out, is this fear? Is this anxiety? Did I not get enough sleep last night? Am I getting sick? I mean, there's so many options. And I know in my journey, I am leaning more toward trying to figure out the energetic reason behind it, because that's what ends up being more, I don't want to say more true, but I'm able to figure out the root of the feeling in my body more quickly and then find a more simple resolution, because we overcomplicate things.
Yeah,
I think.
for sure. Yes. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So I guess with the piece around excitement and anxiety, first, I love what you said about the kind of diagnosing of normal human experiences.
That's a good way of putting it. We're constantly diagnosing. And then we go to Google, and now we go to ChatGPT.
And WebMD.
Right.
And as a therapist, to work with insurance companies, it is the bane of my existence. And while I recognize so many of us, including myself, have insurance, so therefore we want to use it, it does limit in some ways people's perception around working through and actually treating some of the symptoms, because that's all it is. We give the diagnosis simply for insurance purposes.
The code.
That's it. That is all I'm doing, is trying to bill your insurance and, yes, make a treatment plan according to the symptoms. And also, because I look at it from a holistic model, sometimes people get so, I guess, locked onto that.
The diagnosis.
Yes. Yeah. And for some people, it can be freeing and validating also. And for others, it may be limiting in terms of what that means for them.
And then they create their identity around it more. Right.
Yeah. So I really, for a lot of folks, I'll say, this is kind of what that may look like in terms of this. And also, let's go back to the basics, like you're saying. What's sleep like? How are you taking care of your body and your mind? What type of people are in your life? What does community look like? And so from just like a holistic lens, let's start there and then kind of tease out what's your body carrying on a somatic level in terms of your traumas, because your body does keep those things stored within it.
Your own traumas, ancestral traumas.
Absolutely. Those generational patterns and knowings. So then it's for many people, so many different layers and levels. And I think traditional talk therapy and people that come in hoping to not have anxiety ever, or I don't want to feel these things. And it's like, well, you're coming probably not to the right person, because for me, it's like normalizing. Those emotions are a part of the human experience. We're here to get rid of them. We're here to lean in, understand them better, and maybe recognize if those emotions are trying to tell us something, what are they trying to tell us? And getting to the root of that, we kind of allow you to listen to them differently from a different perspective.
And changing your perspective, and then that's when your behavior can change.
Yeah. Not the judgments or the shoulds, like you were saying, but allowing.
Yeah.
And, from the nervous system perspective, things like excitement and anxiety are mobilizing. Anger is too. And so if anything, they're calling us to act.
I love that.
And if they're calling us to act, what does that look like? But then for folks, that's where fear shows up, because it's if we're called to act and that means I've got to change something,
Right.
what does that mean? And what if I'm standing over here alone without these people or these comfort familiarities? Because I'm calling them to go into the unfamiliar, the new stuff.
Yeah.
That then they're like,
How do you take people there on their terms? What does that look like? 'Cause in working with people myself, you have to acknowledge where they are, and there are just so many different places. And I acknowledge that some people listening to this podcast, I go into some topics and you're like, whoa, like, what on earth are you talking about? Because we all have such varied experiences. I can imagine part of the answer is intuition. Like you can just kind of sense where somebody is pretty quickly. But dive in a little bit more about how you manage that when you're talking with somebody new.
yeah, that can be a tricky thing, because some people, in terms of readiness, come in ready on like a soul, mind, body, spirit level. They are ready because they've already started to do some of their own work and recognizing some of the generational patterns and things that are happening. And some people come in and they say they're ready. They're like, I want to change this. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm ready with you. And then that's when some of the fear and some of the hesitancy and ambiguity shows up, because they're not really sure what it looks like to be ready, and then also what that other life and possibility is. And so I remember one of my supervisors, she said to me, like, don't work harder than the client. And there's this kind of argument between therapists often around what that actually means. And for me, sometimes I do work harder than the client. And what I mean by that is I may give extra resources or go out of my way to call with them the psychiatrist, because I can recognize I've had people lead me as teachers when I wasn't sure what something looked like, and meeting them where they're at. And so I do often tell my clients, like, if I give a homework that brings up something for you, or you're not ready for that yet, okay, let's talk about that. That's more information to explore, and we can go into that before you do the thing. So meeting them where they're at, and also sometimes I do allow myself to give extra effort and intentionality to help lay a good foundation for people to know what emotional safety looks like in an experience of themselves. Because so many people have family, friends, whomever, where they haven't had a really safe environment to just show up unconditionally as them, even if that means they're not ready, and have that be accepted.
And I think most people come into therapy feeling like they need to be fixed, to be told, you're perfect, exactly how you are.
Yes. Yep. And I'm not trying to change you. That's not what we're here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just so contrary, I think, to what people think about therapy. Do you work with couples at all?
I do.
That's another layer of complexity, because in terms of expectations and when two people come in together, or families, how do you sort that out when they could be in very, very different places and have very, very different expectations of what's going to happen or what they would like to happen. And one person might be ready and one person may not be ready at all.
Yeah, it's a different level and layer, because when you're working with one person, that's already its own layers.
Right.
Of what's presenting, what they want to work on, and the goals, what they're coming in with in terms of history. So many things. And then you add on two people.
Right.
And so there's like this kind of dance that you recognize too when you see two people interacting from again, mind, body, soul, especially in a physical setting. You can see those cues where their body is telling you something they're not even saying, whether it's they're turning away or they've kind of withdrawn into themselves, and another person has taken up so much space on the couch. You see all of it. And then, I'm the type of therapist, I call those things out. And so to call them out as body language, because it literally is the language that's explaining to you some of what's happening, even that they're telling you, oh, I feel dismissed, or I feel like I'm not, valued, and you're seeing it, and you have to give it back to them. What do they want to do with that? Or again, readiness. Are they ready to acknowledge their own shadows, to show up differently and have some flexibility and perspective to shine light on how this person might be feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are ready for that, and some people are not. And that's okay.
I remember my mother telling me my parents are divorced and they went to therapy, and there was infidelity on the part of my father, and my mother reflected sitting with the therapist, and that's what she wanted to talk about. She was hurt, and my father came in and complained about where she put the sponge on the sink. And she felt like, what are we doing here? However, though, I can see now from a therapist perspective, again, it's like meeting people where they are. If a therapist were just to dismiss both complaints, even if one is a deflection from bigger issues, which
Right.
most likely that's what it was, you have to work with that.
And everything is data.
Yes.
When I did my yoga training, I think that's one of the best pieces of information I got is like, whatever's showing up, that is data to be curious about, not to judge. And that, because I'm a human, can sometimes show up and I'm like, wait, pause, what, hold on. Yes, I can acknowledge that happening for me, that I'm like, why is he deflecting? Why is she deflecting? No, go back to be curious about that. Why is that important? Why was that sponge so important for you? You know, to like tease through like the surface stuff versus what's happening at the roots here.
And my experience in therapy with my ex-husband, so many people I felt like were telling me how to change to adapt to him. I think when I had heard that enough times, it triggered something in me like, I'm not doing this. No. Why? Why should I am not willing to make those changes. Yeah.
And the part that some people also recognize too is the grieving process with relationships sometimes does start with that bargaining, where people recognize like, oh, maybe I'll try to change these things. And they'll start there. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me you're going to change this to be accepted. Is that a compromise, or are you at a core level accepting values and traits and characteristics from someone that you wouldn't want your friend, your family member, your child to accept? And then it's a different conversation. Like, okay.
Right. I think that's such a powerful question, is like, is that what you would tell your friend or your daughter to do? Having a daughter, I think about that a lot. Having children is a whole nother mirror into yourself. And, having to heal things before you can help them. And before we turned the camera on, we were talking a little bit about the desire. And I think a lot of people are feeling this in this moment, to look into not only the past that they lived and that their parents lived, but looking back even further. Talk a little bit about that in your own life and how that's showing up for you.
I have always been really interested in ancestry. And I don't know if it was just a genuine curiosity because of some of my early experiences and seeing the impact of family dynamics on me and other people around me. But I created like a really big, it's at home in my parents' house, this huge ancestry painting when I was a lot younger. And I've now kind of done, have you heard of a genogram?
No.
So we had to do that in college.
Okay.
But I've tried to kind of tease through that.
What is a genogram?
So it is basically a family tree, but more in depth, where you actually acknowledge relationships, trauma, abuse, marital changes such as divorce, separation, infidelity, any of those things you acknowledge.
And is it
medical histories?
Is it based off of like this world fact? Like, my mother told me that this is true and you're putting that into the genogram? Or is it somewhat like maybe like assumptions about, well, this dynamic most likely because of the circumstances could have been this?
I would say it could be both, but I look at it from like an oral history perspective, like asking different family members, what was that relationship like? And so I got to do some of that this past weekend, asking about, I guess it'd be like my great grandparents on my dad's side and asking about them and what did those relationships look like. And it's really interesting the way that my great aunt would describe like her grandma, and she would say, oh, you know, like she was really happy-go-lucky and her husband was really quiet.
Okay.
And like he stayed to himself and he just worked outside all the time. But she never met a stranger. She wanted to talk to everybody. And I went home and I told my husband, and he was like, that's me and you. Because he's very quiet to himself. And so just to see like generationally certain patterns, good ones too. Like we can acknowledge that there's good and hard stuff and challenges. And some of those things, even the challenges, have made us who we are. So essentially the genogram is like a ancestral tree with medical history, with relationship history, and to look back at that and now add the spiritual gift part.
Yeah.
Where I can connect those dots of this person has said that this was something that they experienced. Really interesting to see certain generational patterns kind of passed down.
So in this painting that you made in your childhood, now that you're doing this work and learning about these stories, are there things that you put in that painting that you're now finding out to be accurate in some sense? Like you were just kind of imagining.
The original painting is basically just a big tree with a sunset and then names.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't have anything else. And so I've thought about like making a new one now present day, because with the genogram you have symbols for each thing, kind of like a code on a map.
Okay.
So if, let's say you were describing, I don't know, divorce, the symbol for that might be an X. But there's different symbols that signify each thing, and then there's a different code. So you can look at the code and kind of see what each thing means. But I've thought about making a new one.
Yeah.
Now with all of the information I have.
Yeah.
Actual like big one like that, but I haven't done that yet.
That's a fascinating idea. Yeah. Stories are so powerful.
Yes.
And truth. And because everybody is, you know, like they say that if 10 people witness an accident, no story about that accident is going to be the same.
Right. Yes.
But at the same time, each of those stories are true to the person telling the story.
Yes.
And so when you dive into family dynamics, gosh, there are so many different stories, so many different perspectives. I can see how it can be very illuminating, but also when people do genealogy, it's almost in the same way as providing a diagnosis to somebody. They can take something and make it their identity rather than letting the information flow and be open to a different truth coming in at some other point in time. Do you have any reflections on that, on truth and storytelling and how they can help shape us for the positive or for the negative?
Yeah. Well, I really like what you said about the perspective, because even going back to like the couples therapy, it can be two people in the same experience that have very different recollections of the experience or even feelings about the experience. So then to, you know, go to the family level where there's so many different things that can impact how someone sees an experience and their perspective without being attached to the narrative can be really difficult. For me, I think it has maybe just provided more insight around why, like as a kid in certain rooms, like my empathy, I was like, what is happening in here? Like no one would say a word, but I knew internally something is like, somebody's mad. This person's mad and that person's anxious and they're appeasing them. You know what I mean? Like I knew something was off, but you can't put your finger on it. So then just to have validation that there are these relationship pieces that you can acknowledge, and that doesn't mean that someone is wrong for acknowledging them, you know?
Right. I was so proud of my mom. I had this conversation with her that I recently wrote about an experience I had as a teenager. I woke up and my sister was above me with a knife, and she's adopted, and anyway, a very complex relationship. But my mom read it. I didn't know that she was reading my stuff. So thank you, Mom. And she also said that as she was reading it, because she was there too, you know, it was a very intense experience for her as well. Her immediate reaction was like, oh, well, that detail's not right. That detail's not right. That's not how the door was. But then she said she was able to quickly like step back and realize that the details don't matter. What matters is the lesson and what Sarah's taking out of this experience. And then I think she was able to take maybe a different lesson and reframe that experience that was traumatic for all of us.
So I hope that in the future I can do some retreats and things like that to help individuals on a different level, because I think this kind of space is limiting in some ways. And even, things like providing Reiki, you do have the ability to help someone for that short experience without words even being involved. However, being in places like Costa Rica and getting back to nature and allowing, the body to speak through the experience can be really powerful. So that is one of my goals, is to provide some retreats in the future. And I really have been called towards learning and practicing Afro-Indigenous practices. So things like venerating my ancestors and having altars and practices that allow me to give reverence to their spirits, acknowledge them, and know that I know that they're watching and with me often, has been really powerful. Where I think some people have, even around perspective, like you were just saying, misinformation around what that is. Like they think hoodoo is voodoo. They're not the same thing. And that certain practices that are closed don't include people like me because of the way I look, but my dad is Black. And so people on like first glance can say like, why would you be practicing that without knowing me and my roots? There's automatic judgments around, people and how they look, when actually those things are inherited through me. And even before I had any words for what that meant, I was called to make an altar. Like, I just wanted to do those things. I wanted to learn about the practices and even superstitions that are passed down around like why you don't do certain things. In my family, they're just kind of, you don't do them. But okay, I want to know why. And now having the knowledge of like, these are not just superstitions, but practices around spirit and why it's important to not put your purse on the floor or not shower when it's raining and things like that that have deeper meaning to it spiritually.
My best friend is African American and has no idea where he's from and what practices would have been in his ancestral family. And I think that's the experience for a lot of African Americans. And I don't want to speak for him, but he almost resists knowing in a way. And there are a lot of different reasons why that might be, but it also allows him to just feel and go with whatever feels right without any pull that's more logical. That's like, oh, well, my family is from Ghana, and so these are the practices that they did there. But I think there's also trauma related to that response as well, of resisting that, like that was stolen from so many people in this country.
Safe to practice here because you think about like enslaved individuals that were caught doing those things. That wasn't safe. And so our body remembers those things too on a bone level around like, if that's not safe, my ancestors weren't safe doing that generationally and ancestrally. Getting back to that, and that calling for some people does feel not only unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but there's the nervous system is triggered around like hypervigilance, safety.
Fear erases our knowing. That's something that just came to me and it's done intentionally. Gosh.
Yeah. And it's true that a lot of in our society, it is based on fear-driven motivations, like even working, right? There's the fear of like, if you don't work, blah, 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 blah. If you don't do these things. So a lot of people don't even give themselves permission to deconstruct what's been given to them in terms of the shoulds and expectations and societal norms versus what they actually believe to be true and want to explore.
Talk a little bit about, we're currently in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is a very, very conservative Christian place. And even after spending a little bit of time here, realizing that there's so many people here who are not overtly resisting that Christian conservative mindset, but that there is just a really strong group of people who are not practicing that. And so in your practice here, are you seeing a mix of people who are drawn to you, or is it more like people who are kind of turning away from that really strong, put your blinders on, this is the way kind of Christianity that's practiced by so many people here?
I honestly have a mix of individuals that come to me for a variety of different reasons. Even sometimes I'm surprised. I've had preachers.
Okay.
I've had,
Wow.
yeah,
Interesting.
active, still preaching, sit on my
Well,
couch.
good on
Yeah.
them. You're seeking out therapy.
Yes.
Because, oh, that's fascinating, actually. I would love to talk to a minister in that kind of situation, because I wouldn't think that somebody who is embodying their faith in that way would seek out therapy. Yeah.
Well, and it was interesting talking with him specifically because he would often say, like, the words teaches us to seek wise counsel. And so, depending on who you talk to in this area, you find a variety of people who actually are more open to experiencing learning and different practices that, like we said, are still from God, but maybe have been told they were evil.
Yeah.
Or what have you, and they're not.
Yeah.
And so learning about that for themselves. But I've got folks who are Buddhist or different religions and atheist even. And that intrigues me too, because it's like, okay, I can learn from you what got you in this area of life, in this perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that even sometimes they're open to learning on a mind, body, soul connection level how to experience themselves differently. And so I think people in this area are more so looking for accepting spaces. And that's what I try to provide is you can have any identity. You can be whoever you are. I'm accepting of you in this space, bringing all of that, no judgment, just here to help you be a happier, healthier version of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I have seen a resurgence recently of more non-conventional practices in this area and accepting that.
I think in this country and maybe even the world, I think people are opening up their minds more. I think COVID played a part. COVID forced us to sit with ourselves and be. After going through my divorce, my partner, who's now my best friend and was my mentor for a long period of time, would tell me, Sarah, I think you just need to sit at home and be. And I was like, no, I need to go live life. And then COVID forced me to sit home and just be. And collectively, we sat with our thoughts because we couldn't go out. I think that it leveled us up collectively, but now we're in another moment that is just so, that has a lot of people looking and seeking something else.
Yes. And the social media or like power of the internet, I do think is really connecting in many ways to be able to experience other people, other faiths in different parts of the world, and also can be a barrier or even an addiction to numb out and scroll for hours. And you have to be intentional about what you allow, the internet being one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So it can be a space to like find like-minded, aware individuals, and also it can be a place that people often numb out and try not to feel.
And where you can get validated for whatever you're sitting with in that moment. And even if it's something destructive, you can find all of these other people and so they're like, well, if they're doing it, I can do it too. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the thing I'm noticing too is a lot of like spiritual bypassing, which is something I think is important to talk about because in a lot of religious or spiritual communities, like things like the election or politics or just human rights in general, people say, oh, well, give it to God and pray about it and love and light and like, okay, and we are in a human experience down here, not up there or anywhere else.
Yeah, it's so dangerous to compartmentalize in that way.
Yes.
Put your head in the sand. Yeah. And then when people are sitting with people who are different than them, and that's why stories are so important too, then they understand and they're kind of forced to come out of that compartmentalization, and think a little bit. I mean, they can still choose not to. Lots of people still choose not to. But I personally am just excited by this point in our timeline, our collective timeline. I think that it really is an awakening, and it's just so exciting um, to be witness to it.
And this kind of relates, and I don't know, maybe it's important to tell you, but my mom was disowned by her dad for being married to my dad and then having me. And what's
Geez.
interesting
Yeah.
and kind of related to what you're just saying is that when you sit down and talk to people, you recognize there's more similarities or a level of understanding. And so when I finally did meet my grandpa, it was great. Like he was like, okay, that's not maybe what I expected. I don't know what that means. But
Yeah.
same when he met my dad later in life and had to come and live with us, they were so similar. Like before he passed, they are very much alike in a lot of the things they enjoy, like outdoor activities and whatever. And so they then spent time together, and it was like all of those judgments and preconceived notions.
Wasted time in sitting in those. We could have spent so much more time enjoying things together. Yeah. But that's so beautiful to come to that realization, even if it is later in life.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful at least before my grandpa died, that was something that got to change for him to spend time with my dad and me and my mom to also see that come all the way around. I'm sure she never thought that would happen.
Right.
It was really beautiful, and to see the forgiveness from my dad because he knew all the things that had been said and had happened, and my mom, and then the acceptance from my grandpa. On a soul level, I just felt like that was really a great lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful story. And that's what we need more of in this world. And I think that this moment is opening that up for so many people. To have experiences like that where they realize we're all one. We're all one.
We are.
So now what's coming up for you? What are you excited about? How are you going to play in the next few months?
I'm excited. I'm going on some travels. I'm really excited right now about where I'm at in life, and I feel like there's endless possibilities around what it can look like, who I'm stepping into my power to be, and just continuing to see doors open to meet people like you that just continuously affirm and kind of provide confirmation to me that, like, when I allow myself to step out of the unfamiliar or step out of the familiar into the unfamiliar, that people who align and are open and friendly and kind exist, but that's where a lot of opportunities just for connection and joy happen too. Yeah.
And that's what life is about. I met somebody the other day who is a healer and has a practice, and she is not on social media at all. And I just was so fascinated by this because I'm in this place where I'm like casting this really wide net. And I believe that's what I'm supposed to be doing, but there are challenges to that. And she's living this life where she's like, people just come to me. I'm like, oh, that is beautiful to just be at such a vibration. And I'm experiencing that. Maybe that's what I need to manifest. And actually, that is what I manifest. Like things just being easy and all the things, and believing that all the things that I need in every moment will be delivered to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the mind gets in the way of that, like the follow-up, like how, who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
It's like, don't have to have any of that figured out to step into the knowing and the truth that is the existence and reality.
Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. I've just so enjoyed sharing energy with you. You are so calming and just such a gift to everybody who comes into your presence. And so I'm excited for you. I am seeing some big things coming your way.
I'm excited too. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a retreat or something.
Yeah. I keep running into everybody I talk to. Costa Rica comes up, and that will be my home. And basically, in my heart, it is my home right now. But I'm very happy to be here. Gosh, in this, like we talked about, in this area in Southern Virginia, is a place where things are happening.
There's a shift, and it's been like culminating for a while, and now I feel like it's actually coming to fruition where we're seeing the physical manifestation of the internal work a lot of us have been doing for a while.
Yeah.
Like we've been on this journey, and now we're finding each other, and it's just aligning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're raising each other up. I mean, that's exactly what my mission is. So thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to talking again. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Goddess in Training. I hope something in this episode stirred your knowing or softened your heart. If it spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it, or leave a review or comment to help others find us. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to hear more conversations like this, please consider supporting Goddess in Training on Patreon. For more tools and offerings to deepen your intuition practice, visit goddessintraining.online. You can also join the Scroll of Seshat on Substack for twice-weekly stories of how I followed my intuition. The music for Goddess in Training is Madre Ayahuasca by Arkawa, and you can find more of his music in the link to his website in the show notes. Remember, your intuition is not a mystery, it's a memory. Keep listening.
Madre Ayahuasca, resplandor del fuego, estrellita, tabaco santo, fuerza de rapé, soplo de luz, soplo encantado, viajecito, bendición del cielo, fortaleza, tigrecito de la sed.